Giant Stalker, Dragon Stalker, Crypt Stalker, Demon Stalker, Rift Stalker, Grown Stalker, Crypt Stalker, Scourge Stalker, Wind Runner, I'm a boning Lead Skill Hunter. A Death Dealer, a Life Stealer, that's just the cost of being awesome.
Welcome to episode 130 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from WoW Insider, OTPS, and Call to Auction.
And I'm Darkbrew from thebrewhall.com and the Brewhall on Twitter.
And this is Frostheim from Warcraft Hunters Union, WoW Insider, and Frostheim WHU on Twitter.
And I'm Molly Sonder from the Hunting Party Podcast and the Torlord Trader Podcast. Yes, stealing Frostheim's lines.
Once again. All right, and if you want to participate in the chat room today but aren't registered, just go to the chat window, and today you're going to type, "Heal me, I need heals," in the chat window, and you'll be prompted to register, and we'll explain that in just a little bit here.
Indeed, and we are joined in the chat room today by many hunters who are in desperate need of healing, including BM Jager, Chimmy, Dusk Wander, Foxtrap05, Fred Dog 240, Get the Gobo, Huntress Rachel, Induates, Calvin Hobbs, Kilu, Layla Llewellyn, Scruffy, Warden Warvinny, and as always, your lovely moderator, Ollie Sonder. And something that I have realized is that some of these hunter names, as I'm rattling through, that I like horribly mispronounce, I've gotten so used to mispronouncing them that even if I'm like paying attention and trying to pronounce it right, I'm just in the habit of pronouncing it wrong. So I just continue to throw out the mispronunciations. So like, yeah, all of those people who are like, one day, Frostheim will get my name right. It seems not to be the case because I'm like imprinting the improper pronunciation in my brain, the one in my head. And that's just not going to change. So, if you have a question for us today or a topic that you would like us to discuss, other than the topics that I said we would be discussing on Twitter, you can send that question in a private message to Ollie Sonder, and she'll be ranking your questions and, in fact, determining which ones get asked and which ones don't get asked based on, what should it be today? Based on what you think is the best name for a new porcupine pet. We got those adorable porcupines in beta. What is a good porcupine name?
Fair enough. So, let's
I was
start off with...
actually flying out to Darnassus this week. I was on the boat, I looked down the water, and it's full of baby squid or baby octopus. Has that been there for very long? Because I don't remember these at all.
I don't really spend a lot of time in Canada. I mean, Elflands.
Darnassus.
Same thing.
I don't know. I've never noticed that before. Like I said, I don't go to spend much time in Darnassus either, but someone in the chat room saying it's for the cooking daily. There's one of the new cooking dailies they did. So it's relatively new, I guess.
Fair enough then.
Okay, I was hoping it was a Mr. Pandaria pre-event thing.
Pre-event, the attack of the squid. Oh my God, they're coming on land. They have water helmets now.
Shipwreck or something, and that's how we end up Mr. Pandaria. So these baby squid, and there's like Mama Squid, and Mama Squid attacks our ship, and we end up crashed on this misty beach with all these pandas. They got to do something for an event.
I don't know. I think the problem with that theory is that it presumes that you lose to a squid. That just wouldn't happen. So it appears that we've had a substantial number of Mists of Pandaria beta updates since last week's show, including a big chunk of them that apparently were released like 2 hours after the show.
Yeah, less than that maybe, but yeah, exactly.
And that's just because Blizzard hates us. Actually, frequently these updates happen on Friday, I've noticed. And that's great for the show. It's horrible for my blog, but it's great for the show. But yeah, not this time. We once again got that Saturday update. Mm-hmm. So the most recent of these is really the self-healing nerf Matt hit.
Yeah.
Which I even had a video, and self-healing was awesome in the Mists of Pandaria beta. If you took the Spirit Bond talent, it was only overpowered I mean, it depends on the design philosophy. In a design philosophy where there's a chance of you dying, maybe it was overpowered.
See, ever since that survival nerf that you got blamed for, I can see you're hesitant to say anything is too strong at this point.
Boy, which is horrible, right? Because I made a video. It's like, oh, look, I just attack as many things as possible, and 8 of them are attacking me, and my health never goes below 75%. This is awesome. Self-healing
Yeah,
stuff.
now imagine
Not
there
my
were
fault.
players.
So the big thing was Spirit Bond. Spirit Bond was a crazy amount of self-healing, a really truly meaningful amount in raiding sit and PvP situations, a ridiculous amount for soloing and leveling situations. And so the two targets for the nerf was Spirit Bond, which frankly probably needed to get nerfed. Spirit Bond was regenerating 3% of your total health every 2 seconds, which was ridiculous. And now it's down to 1% of your total health every 2 seconds. And you know what? That's still pretty good. That still
makes it a must-have for PvP.
That's still so much better than what it does now. It's so much better. And
right.
it's
and it works with Stampede, correct? Like all 5 of those pets will contribute. Doesn't it stack?
yeah, we're not certain if that's on purpose or not, though. That really smells like a oops.
Well, it strikes me as that would be the default behavior. If you wanted to code that in, you'd be like, all right, generate 5 pets. Let's see, what can these pets not do? Okay, they can't all kill command at the same time. What else can they not do? Everything else looks like it'd be. Let's see what it looks like when we let all 5 of them do it. And giving the hunter, a health bonus essentially, or a healing bonus seems like the kind of thing they'd be like, all right, let's see how this plays out. Because I think it's still a 10-minute cooldown.
Yeah, it's a 10-minute cooldown.
So that means this is not usable in Arena.
Right, and the duration is really short. It's like 10-second duration. So it doesn't seem like an overpowered thing to let the healing happen, but we still don't know if it's deliberate or not. But overall, even ignoring that, 1% of your health every 2 seconds, it's still really good. It's really nice. It's going to help you heal up after taking lots of damage. It's just not going to keep you healed through taking damage, which is kind of happened before. And then the other big one was Exhilaration, which was a talent that healed you for 15% of your total health when you disengaged. And they chopped that puppy down to 5%. And that one...
That's the same ratio as Spirit Bond. Spirit Bond was brought down to a third of where it was, same as Exhilaration. I think they just said hunters are healing themselves about 3 times as much as they need to, and they just adjusted them both accordingly.
I think we're going to see Exhilaration go back up, because at 5%, it's no longer super meaningful. And unlike Spirit Bond, it doesn't just happen. You got to be disengaging. And if you're in an environment where you're disengaging all the time, no matter what, sure, okay, well, 5% every X number of seconds. But if you're not, you have to actively do something to get that heal.
Well, let's look at all the potential things that you could be doing with your hunter. PvP, PvE.
Yeah.
And of the two of those, which one do you disengage the most in? PvP.
Right. So but you also have the other one, the sticky webs or whatever, narrow escape, I guess, which basically does sticky webs when you disengage. I mean, it sort of roots your targets in place. So would that be better than the heal for PvP?
No, because you have pets that can do that. Admittedly, you have a lot more pets now that can do other things, so maybe that won't be... Like right now, the spider's my go-to pet just because I get a short web that I can use on a very short duration, a very short cooldown, basically every fight. If I did take the whatever it was called, the one that does that when you disengage, then I would probably not take the spider out as much. I'd probably take a disarm or something, but even though it's on a longer cooldown. But with all the new pets, maybe there'll be some other new ideal pet for PvP, for Arena at least.
And to be fair, it's worth pointing out that Exhilaration, that 15% healing that just got chopped down to 5%, your options are the web trap when you disengage. Well, that's just not going to be used in PvE. And then post haste, which boosts your movement speed after you disengage. So
that is actually ideal for PvE. I found that more useful in raiding than a self-heal.
Well, I think a 15% self-heal would be more useful, but against a 5% self-heal, there's not really much question. I'm taking that. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see disengage come back up to like an 8-10% range. Exhilaration. Excuse me. So, because 5% seems a little... That's so low.
It's really not, though. You think of it as it's just 5% of your health, but that is a surprising amount considering how frequently we disengage. I mean, it's not as much as Spirit Bond, but it's in the same range of hit points per hour that you would get.
Yeah, except the thing is, well, of course, maybe it's not the right thing to do to compare it to Spirit Bond because they're not on the same talent tier. But
No.
Spirit Bond is passive; it always happens. Exhilaration, you're not necessarily always wanting to disengage, and at 15%, hell yeah, I'm using disengage. I'm making a power or my disengage is up. I don't care what's happening. I'm bouncing somewhere. But at 5%, meh.
Yeah.
So that was a sad one. Spirit Bond, I totally understand. It probably needed to come down.
I think that for PvP reasons alone, they both need to be lower than where they were. I don't know whether this is where it'll end up staying. I'm worried that even at 5%, considering how frequently we disengage in PvP, that might be considered too much. But I wish that there was a way to sort of have your cake and eat it too, but there isn't. So one thing I wanted to talk about, moving on for a second, Steady Shot. They've totally changed the amount of focus at it. You remember Ghostcrawler actually had a quote recently that said focus feels a little too slow?
Yeah, and it's a crazy change to Steady Shot.
Yeah.
I mean, going from 9 focus regen to 14 focus regen. That's an extra.
Now, is that also for Cobra Shot?
No, as I was going to say, I don't think it is, and that's the interesting thing. It's just Steady Shot. It's not Cobra Shot.
Well, right now, there are some hunters in PvP that even if they're playing marks when they would want to use Steady Shot, they use Cobra Shots because it skips armor.
Yeah.
Maybe this is to address that.
Well, I think this is maybe hitting 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Because this is a really easy way to turn up focus regen on marksmen specifically.
Yeah.
Because keep it in mind that in Mists of Pandaria, Survival and Beast Mastery literally don't have Steady Shot. They don't have it. They don't have the ability to push the Steady Shot button. And I think the opposite is true. I think Marksman doesn't have the Cobra Shot button anymore.
Okay. I thought they still had it.
Yeah, because now, that was one of the interesting things they did is they didn't give both to everybody. They went, nope, you're using this. You're not supposed to use that, so we're just not going to give it to you. Well,
I can tell you that at level 85, and obviously who knows what this will look like at 90, but marksmanship feels like the spec that is more likely to be focus starved. Like,
yes.
I play marks for PvP mostly, but even when I'm, in a PvP situation where, hey, there's a big boss in their castle you have to kill, and I switch to PvE, my standard rotation, I feel like, even if you keep your improved Steady Shot up, it just never feels like you have enough focus because, you have enough for a couple of arcane shots, sure, but you don't have enough to dump with aim shot.
And that's the rough thing. It's that Marksman has aim shot, which has a profound aim shot and improved steady, or which improved focus or whatever it's called now, have kind of a profound impact on how complicated that rotation is. And I totally agree that marksmanship is the more focus starved, at least at 85 in the beta. Mm-hmm. And but wow, I would have thought bringing them up to 12 focus per study would be big. 14 focus per study,
right?
Right, they turn the knob
way high, yeah, and then lower it.
Yeah,
bring it
copy
back
over a character with 2 tier 13, and that turns into what? 28.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's right.
It's,
when you go in there with the tier set, the current tier set to start out the expansion, that increases doubles the amount of focus that you gain from that shot. Oh yeah.
No, it's really interesting to see them. Even though I suspect we'll end up in the middle, but it's really interesting when they're turning that knob all the way to one end and all the way to the other end. Because 14 focus. I haven't actually gone on and switched back to marksman on the beta to play with it, but that I can only assume that is being done to specifically make it easier to put aim shots in.
And I mean, in the other 2 specs, Beast Mastery, when you're under Bestial Wrath, you have all your focus costs reduced, and that's every minute you can pretty much have that up, and then
Beast
what does
Mastery
Survival have
a focus problem?
They get they have crits that boost focus, right? Correct? They have a way to regenerate some focus.
I think
isn't that a talent? Isn't that a talent now?
Oh, is it? Maybe it is. I don't know.
Well,
that's Thrill of the Hunt.
Thrill of the Hunt.
60
okay.
talents. You have 15%
Okay.
chance when you fire range attack to cost focus
Okay.
too. Which is great. Anybody can take it, but if you take that, you're not taking readiness.
Correct.
I don't see that being as much. Well, I mean, we'd have to sim it out, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So, of interest, I'm gonna I'm gonna switch to the small one before we go to the big one. Misdirection is now has a new effect caused by the glyph of direction, and it makes your target appear 30% larger.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, you
This
know
is
what I
a
was
minor.
thinking?
It's a minor glyph, right?
Which is a perfect place for it, because I love how minor glyphs are just little things that make your life theoretically easier. This is one of those things that makes misdirection work in PvP. It's just so funny. Like right now, you misdirect someone, you hit a player, they laugh at you. They're just like, "Why are you wasting globals when you should be shooting me?" If you cast misdirection in a BG on somebody you know can take a few hits, let's say for example a Blood DK in full resilience gear or some sort of other flag carrier tank guy, and you make him bigger, everybody's going to be like, oh, well, there's somebody turning huge. I should hit that. Now, if you can make him a range for it to turn red at the same time, and it's over.
Which is funny because then misdirection is actually socially fulfilling its function. In
That's
PvP.
what I was getting at.
Yes.
I like it also because at least right now, this won't be as accurate in mists, but right now, if you ever see anyone expand in a PvP environment, you know for a fact. No, you don't. But most people assume that means that they have that trinket, or weapon or some sort
Something
of
something that they're under a buff, making them tougher.
PvE gear specifically. There's no PvP gear that does that.
Well, we know we
if
have
you
the-
see someone
well,
turning
hunters have
large,
that.
you're like, oh, they're using PvE gear, and you're like, that means they're probably squishy. I could probably take them out. So you switch to them.
Yeah, hunters we have that pole arm off of Deathwing.
I think that's it. We have the Deathwing polearm. There's also a few other classes that have other things there. I don't even remember. Man, now that I think of it, it's mostly hunters that do that. Hunters are like cats.
So I mean, there was one other minor glyph that I thought was kind of cute, which was for Hunter's Mark. It now places a bullseye on your target instead of the usual arrow video. Once again, I'm really happy to see some cool little cosmetic minor glyphs. It's kind of what I felt like minor glyphs should have been all along.
Yeah, I would like to see that in action. It might actually just be less obnoxious because when you have an arrow floating over your head, you're just like, it's so obvious.
I assume this wouldn't be above the character. This would be right in the middle of the character.
That'll be great to know that what they need to do is make it a giant pulsing bullseye that appears 2 feet in front of the character. Just sort of obscures the opponent's vision. Stupid bullseye!
Speaking of obscuring things, especially in PvP, one of the things that I've had a lot of fun doing lately is throwing down my guild tabard in the middle of a fight. Because I can name my pets after myself, and if I feign death, they untarget me, and if I send my pet in to attack them, they automatically target whoever's attacking them. And then if I've recently thrown down my guild tabard and I'm standing on the other side of it, they're sitting there furiously trying to click on it. This is mostly for people without Gladius or unit trims or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of funny. Explosive Trap has 2 changes to it. First of all, we can glyph it so that there's no damage and it's only knockback. And second of all, it's got a range of 10 yards. What do you guys think about this?
I think it's going to be endlessly fun on bridges.
It's basically a PvP thing at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean the glyph prior to that just gave it a knockback. I mean, prior to this, you were able to keep the damage and do the knockback. But I think this probably makes sense that if you're going to do one or the other.
And it's totally worth it, even if there isn't a bridge to knock someone off of, right? You know, you're running, you're carrying a flag, whatever. Someone's chasing you. You drop a glyph, it bounces them backwards. You just gain like 15 yards on them or something.
Exactly, and that right there is the key. Explosive trap right now is the last thing I drop because it's in PvP at least because it's going to be breaking CC or whatever. I will drop it sometimes, like if I don't know if I feel that the global is better used on that than a steady shot. But if this thing had a knockback, I would totally just put one at my feet at all times and stand there and turret. And as soon as somebody comes close enough to activate it, then I would start kiting.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, if it has a knockback, well, they're not going to be standing in the trap and taking damage, and they're probably not going to run back to the trap.
Is this a pulsing knockback or a one-time knockback?
I'm sure it's one time. I'm sure it's on the explosive. Basically, you remove the dot. You remove the dot and the damage in exchange for knockback. But it's an interesting point, I think, that you brought up, Euripides. The whole idea that that the dot can be a hindrance in PvP. So you know what? Getting a knockback and removing the dot, hey, that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. That actually segues nicely into something. I don't know if we talked about it last week, but I don't even know if it's in the notes anywhere here. Oh yeah, here we go.
There.
New glyph of scattering shot. Your scatter shot also removes all dots from your target. That's perfect. That happened. That's one of my biggest complaints about Hunter CC. You know, druids have Cyclone, which makes them immune to anything that they happen to have. You know, our traps do not. So if you scatter shot someone with the intent of trapping them immediately afterwards, this is going to be pretty much a must-have glyph.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I suppose
Although,
there could even be applications in PvE to use that, maybe doing some dungeon runs or things like that, where maybe you're not coordinated. You do need to CC a target, and someone's put a dot on it. I mean,
that's true. Yeah, it's always handy to have the opportunity to just take all dots off of it. Does it take all dots, or just your dots from it? Oh, no, it says all damage over time.
Yeah, I would assume it removes whatever dots are on that particular target. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Like, I don't know.
I know. You know what I wish? I wish there was one other ability. Actually, it was a pet ability. I'll wait till we get there. But yeah, no. So it's another. I think what we're seeing is a lot of attention being paid to Hunter PvP, and I think it's a good thing.
Fair.
I think it's a good thing that we have, and it's not all good, right? They reduce self-healing, but Hunters got in Mists of Pandaria are getting so many more PvP abilities and so much changes to how they perform in PvP. And, you know, at BlizzCon...
Specifically, it's a clarity of design that we haven't had in the past. That doesn't mean that our class was unplayable in high-end PvP. As you know, the BlizzCon tournament was won by a team with a Hunter. Mm-hmm. But the clarity of design from the developers is very nice for this.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to see this much attention being paid to how they perform. And I also hope there's a lot of attention being paid to the Hunter skill curve. Although, to be fair, the minimum range removal helps a lot on the skill curve.
That's a big deal. I mean, that's a bigger deal than people realize.
I've been in the situation plenty of times, and to be fair, I'm way on the left end of that skill curve. Mm-hmm. But I've absolutely been in the situation where I'm running around and I'm like, pew, 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 I'm shooting this guy. He's almost dead. Oh, he charges me. Crap, I suck at PvP. I can't get away. If I could just shoot him once more, he'd be dead. But he killed me.
Yeah.
And that situation, you know, it's now a choice for us. Do we want to hang out here and deal some damage while we're getting stunned and slowed and all this other stuff? But maybe it's worthwhile for us to suck up a few globals of that to just get off a few more shots. It becomes a decision now instead of just a law of wow.
I think a much bigger aspect of Hunter skill is, minimum range is a huge part of it, but another part of it is being able to get traps off, because you have to be able to predict what your opponent's going to do in order to get a trap to work. Obviously, you can force them to get trapped if you use a scatter shot first and they don't trinket it and it doesn't get eaten, but that, I think, is the biggest element of Hunter skill. The rest of the skills are analogous to the type of skill that you need for any class, like, you know, when to interrupt, when not to interrupt, you know, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, the other big new stuff that happened, which happened right after last week's show, is the new pets. We finally got to learn what the new pet families in Mists of Pandaria are going to be. And I'm going to actually just start off with the porcupine, because the porcupine had the funnest story behind it. Where porcupines, like right off the bat, there are porcupines in WoW. They're kind of cute looking. They look kind of like beavers like beaver heads with like porcupines on back.
Yeah, they do. They're very bushy looking.
and of course, one of the cute things is there's all sorts of bugs with taming pets right now. One of the cute things with porcupines, which I'm sure is just a bug, but if you tame them, they shrink down to the smallest size. So it's
they look like critters.
Yeah, so it's this itty bitty adorable little porcupine running around with you and tanking stuff.
Or those 5 teeny tiny little porcupines that are all like kill commanding you.
Stampede of wee porcupines, yeah. No, but so the porcupine, everybody really, really liked him right away. Everybody was like, oh yeah, that's going to be one of the new pets. And then apparently they weren't supposed to be, but through some bug you could tame them, but then they were considered boars. And yeah, somebody started a thread on the forums called "Porcupine is for Fight," and Ghostcrawler stepped in and said, "You know what? Yeah, we don't need more boars. We can, more boars. we should have porcupines. We'll make them tameable.
Yeah.
And so we have porcupines. Porcupines are a non-exotic pet. Their special ability is Paralyzing Quill, which fires paralyzing quills around the porcupine, incapacitating all enemies for 2 seconds. That's once a
I wonder
minute.
what they mean by incapacitating, like stunning?
It's a
or...
stun. It's a stun,
stun.
I think.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. An AoE stun, even on a
I know.
1 minute cooldown.
Yeah, a 2-second stun. I guess
like
it
the
has
flavor one.
it has a cast time to it, but in a 60-second cooldown.
It's a 0.5 second cast time, yeah. And then they also have a bonus ability called Rest. You command your porcupine to take a rest, kind of like the bears play dead.
That's so cute. You just tell it to go to sleep.
Like, it's okay, go to sleep now, porcupine. But yeah, so porcupine is definitely so far the pet that has captured the hearts of hunters.
That's funny, because when I was looking at these changes, the first one on my mind was not just because it was first on the list, but the Quillin gives us a battle res.
I know, right?
Very cool.
That was the one that I was just like, this isn't... Everybody, I suppose it's because these aren't as cute, but to me, this is like the biggest thing ever to happen to our pets. Battle reses were like the quintessential, when we got the ability to do heroism in BM, I was just like, this is so awesome. But, it's fair that they gave it to BM because not everybody runs BM because the damage isn't there. Well, I don't think the Quillin's an exotic pet, is it?
Yes, it is.
I believe it is.
Oh, it is.
Actually.
Well, there you
yes,
go.
I
Anyways,
believe it
BM is probably not going to be tuned as far behind in Mists as it was in Cataclysm. So, even then, if BM is a spec that you have to bring for heroism or battle res, that's just freaking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what BM's going to look like, I guess, in terms of DPS, either for utility in PvE and PvP. But I with having 2 specs available, I don't think there's any reason why you wouldn't want to have a BM spec.
If only for this.
And actually, BM is pretty fun to play so far in beta. And you know what? One of the big things that is going to happen is BM is going to be capable of performing much closer to their simmed DPS with all those kill command bugs out. Right? Because there was a point where it's like, according to the numbers, BM is here. But in practice, it's like, I'm hitting kill command. It's not working. My pet's right there. And a lot of that stuff has been fixed, as well as the we're switching targets. I have to wait for my pet to get there. In a sim, that's not an issue, but it is in real life. A lot of that stuff is being removed and making much better. But yeah, Battle Res and Quillin, they kind of look like lions made out of stone. I guess is my description.
Cool. I wasn't even it wasn't clear that they were going to be beasts or pets initially, but I was glad to see that they made those. They're kind of cat-like, but like you said, they're stone looking.
Yeah, and speaking, okay, so they are an exotic, which means they have 2 abilities. Their first ability is Battle Res. Their second ability is Stupid and Pointless and Destined to be Changed. Their second ability is to bring the 5% crit buff, which every hunter
is shared
brings.
by every cat, including
No. Every hunter brings it with True Shot Aura now.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a default hunter raid buff.
I was thinking the agility one.
Yeah, it's the default hunter raid buff. I'm sure that was just an oversight that they're going to fix. And so it'll have something that actually has some meaning for a hunter. But yeah, no, that battle res is a big deal. And don't get me wrong, if you got your druids and stuff, you don't need the Quillin. Let them take care of it. But if you don't, hey, that's an option. And I bet you that'll be really handy when you're running 5-mans. Otherwise, for whatever reason, we have a goat.
That was the one I didn't get.
Yeah, that was
the deal. Was there did somebody start a thread on the forum saying goat is for munch or something like that? Or
No, I don't think so. But
and to be fair, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, nobody's actually found a tameable goat in the game. Goat has been purely data mined by MMO Champion. Does anybody?
Maybe they just put it there so we'd have to talk about it right after the Quillin and be like, we have this awesome stone cat that can bring your fallen allies back to life in combat.
Yeah, I mean, Petopia certainly doesn't
have a goat.
Yeah, and a goat. Yeah, Petopia doesn't have any images of goats right now. I mean, they list it as a tameable family, but they don't have any information about specific goats in the game. Although, I mean, people like stuff like Talbooks and things from Outlands. I mean, people have always wanted to be able to tame those types of animals. So be curious to see if they start putting
Yeah, and there
deer
are
and stuff like venison and stuff like that into the
No.
goat family and let us tame those. I
There's-
don't know.
there's and to be fair, there's a lot of stuff that is clearly meant to be tameable that currently can't be tamed. Like the cranes, which we'll get to in a moment. There's very few cranes that are actually tameable, and there's cranes everywhere. And those are all meant to be tameable. They just haven't got the switch flipped on all of them. And I don't remember what it was called. I did see something that it wasn't called a goat, but it was some sort of hooved mammal with big horns sticking up. I was like, oh, maybe that's the goat family. Oh, cannot be tamed. I guess we'll find out later.
Yeah, yaks were another beast.
Yeah.
Which I'm not
And
sure
so-
they'll be tameable or included in the goat family for some. Sometimes they'll do that. They'll take, it's got horns and fur and look like it could be a goat when they lump them all together like that.
Why not?
Now,
But
my
the goats,
printout didn't go properly, but can one of you guys read off trample? I only got the first line here.
yeah, I mean, trample just says your goat tramples the enemy, kicking up an obscuring cloud of dust, causing all enemies within 10 yards to have their melee and range attack speed reduced by 20% for 30 seconds. This is the classic.
Yeah,
That's like
Yeah.
the tall striders, whatever. There's a couple of
that's
pets we have now
very
that have that
complicated.
same ability.
So
Yeah,
it's,
I don't think that's very. One of the reasons you never see tall striders, or you very rarely see tall striders, is that's a fairly soft debuff, and I don't know. It's an AOE, and it's just kind of.
See, I know they want to be careful with giving us knockbacks and things like that, but goat to me, butting its head and knocking the guy back would be a
oh, see,
best
I was
ability.
thinking, I was thinking they needed an ability that let them eat anything.
That could be their play.
Right.
It'd be like
You know what? They could
devour,
get the armor reduction debuff,
texture.
right? Because they're chewing through the armor. You could have gone that route with them.
Now, see, back in the
Right.
days when you used to actually have to maintain your pet's happiness and feed your pets, that would have been what they could have done. You could have just fed that thing anything. Whatever
Oh
you had,
yeah,
meats,
like vendor items.
yeah, grays.
You could have fed him cloth. You could go and buy linen cloth and just feed that to him. Or he could, yeah. Okay. I kind of wish you had the ability to feed your pets.
Well, you do.
You do.
Well, then I hope that they make this thing eat anything.
But it's just like a role play type thing. There's no reason. You don't have to stop and feed them.
It heals them.
Oh, true.
Fair
But
enough.
you've also got men pet that doesn't cause focus that heals them. So then we have water strider, and water strider looks like one of those water bugs on the surface of a pond, the little four-legged bugs that walk on top of the pond water. They're like a giant version of that, and they're awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they also lumped the fen striders that you got from Zangermarsh into that as well. They're
Yep.
considered water striders as well, have the same ability, which are
Oh,
very
cool.
cool. I've always liked those. I remember
I'm a-
people have always wanted to be able to tame those in the
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah, those are really cool. But so this is a exotic pet, second exotic pet, and its main ability is called Stillwater, which gives everybody the 5% crit buff and the 10% spell power buff. Once again, the 5% crit, whatever. But their secondary ability is so cool. Surface Trot allows the hunter and water strider to walk across water for 10 minutes. Any damage will cancel the effect. So, you
That
get
is
walk on water. I'm like, that's like, dude, yeah, just have that guy in my back pocket, have a BM off spec, while I'm wandering the world and leveling. If I want to go explore some corner, great. Let me just switch to BM, whip out my water strider, and go walking across the water. It'll be sweet.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the kind of thing that would stay if you switch specs. I sure hope so.
It's a good question. I mean, it's supposed to be a 10-minute buff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you can just, like, put
Oh,
the
I
buff
see what you're
on,
saying. Yeah, go to
switch back.
Yeah, that's
That's
pretty
it.
cool.
It's a good question. But, yeah, so I'm a big fan of the water strider. I think that's a cool, useful secondary ability
Yeah.
rather than bringing,
And
like,
The only problem with stuff like this is it's an exotic pet, so you're going to be BM to use it. But if you want to go marksman or survival, it kind of hinders stampede ability, right?
it does.
And that's the only downside to some of these exotic pets is that the
That's an
stampede
excellent
ability
point. Yeah,
is
because
kind of nerfed.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Then we have the crane, and the cranes are found all over Pandaria. There's its special ability is called Lullaby. Puts the target to sleep for 4 seconds. That's it. It's a ranged ability with a 20-yard range, a minute cooldown. The crane also has a bonus ability, which is called Trick, command your crane to do a trick, and the trick is it jumps up in the air to about head height.
Yeah, that's kind of lame. I think because it's a new cool type of animal that you haven't seen in the game before, they've not wanted to make it too overpowered. But Lullaby is not as good as Web, and it functionally accomplishes the same thing. I mean, that's not true. But a 4-second sleep it doesn't deserve a 60-second cooldown.
So it's yeah. So the crane looks cool. It's got that dopey trick. Right now, most of the cranes aren't tameable. There's like some ugly ones that are tameable. I think there's a white one somewhere that's tameable. But they come in all sorts of colors, including pink. I was really, one thing I'm disappointed is none of these pets. I was really hoping we would get a new pet or an old pet whose ability was changing to bring the mastery buff. The new Mists of Pandaria mastery buff, and so far we haven't seen.
Maybe that's what they'll end up doing for the 5% crit that we.
Yeah, maybe they'll do. Maybe they'll add that in. Hopefully, it would make sense to do, especially since, as you say, the crit buff is just completely meaningless.
Yeah. So the final pet is the basilisk. Interesting, they finally decided to turn that into a hunter pet family. Its ability is Petrifying Gaze, turns the target into stone for 3 seconds, causing them to be invulnerable, with a 1-minute cooldown, and I'm really disappointed by this. I haven't got around to taming one yet, but I was talking to another beta hunter, and I'm like, dude, have you tamed a basilisk yet? Like, yeah, I have. Like, dude, you should see if you can use that ability on friendly targets yourself.
I was wondering about that.
Because I was all over that, and then she was like, oh, no, you can't.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think you'd be able to, but this isn't meant to be for like a bonus for us. This is equivalent to... not hibernate. The other one that druids do.
Cyclone?
Thank you. I always forget that. Yeah, Cyclone, which is basically the perfect CC because they have to trinket if they don't want it to last its full duration. There's no way that you can accidentally break somebody out of a Cyclone. So just like there's no way you can accidentally break someone out of this Petrifying Gaze.
Fair enough. I still think it would be awesome if you could like actually have it turn into a PvE thing. Like, I'm taking like crazy amounts of burst damage. I'm going to turn myself to stone for 3 seconds. I can't DPS, but it's a 3-second bubble. Screw you, paladins.
But yeah, no, Basilisk, like I said, this is another long-time pet that people have wanted, and this one is non-exotic, so that's available to all hunters. Yeah, it was only the Water Strider and the Quillen were the only exotics they seem to have introduced so far.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, should we move on to the listener Q&A?
I think we should. And maybe before we do any listener Q&A, I just wanted to read one email because it was a familiar name that I didn't notice until just now.
Okay.
Farah Glimmerdusk, who I've worked with in the past, and I thought he had stopped playing, so I'm glad to see him back, writes in to say, while listening to episode 128, he realized that Blizzard is preparing a final boss of World of Warcraft, a Tenacity Sporebat. No tank could survive the intense DPS of a Sporebat, nor could any healer hope to keep anyone from being one-shot. Naturally, the only way to beat the Tenacity Sporebat would be to form an all-hunter raid with uber-kiting, ping-ponging, and, of course, all Ferocity Sporebats. That's an excellent point. I will have to keep an eye out for that. Okay, you want to go to some...
Yeah. Our first question is for you, Euripides. Turtle Hunter 1 says, this question is for Euripides. Can you ask him why he thinks 15% disengage healed is overpowered when every hybrid class now has the ability to do a massive self-healing, as well as non-hybrid classes such as Mage and Warlocks who also have amazing self-heals and mists? It seems even with the small Spirit Bond increase in mists, we are still by far the lowest self-healing class again. Is it because he is happy he can cast healing spells as a feral without switching forms in Mists of Pandaria? Is that what Euripides' motivation is coming from?
Did he actually say that? Because I don't have a feral, but I don't have
yes,
a druid.
He did say that.
He did say that, yes.
Everybody knows that.
Because that sounds like Frost interjecting on his behalf at the end.
Well, everybody knows that you have a soft spot for feral druids, and that soft spot is in your pants.
The reason I was thinking 15% in conjunction with Spirit Bond was too high is because of the fact that Chimera Shot still heals us. You're right. They do have to balance self-healing around the pure DPS classes. It's not like we can just switch forms or even though it's not our specialization, heal ourselves somehow. But because we have so many different places that we're getting healed from at the same time, they had overtuned it. So what we're seeing here is sort of like they're picking a specific part to retune down a little bit. Where it ends up being, I hope, is where we have enough self-healing, both active and passive, that we can afford to, that we can basically not, be down at like 20,000 health and at the end of a match trying to kite for a life just to avoid taking any hits. So I think that they will strike that balance, but I think that 15% is a little much considering how frequently we disengage, and I think they would have had to nerf something else even harder if they didn't nerf that.
How much does our mail armor come into play here? I mean, some people
not as much. Resilience is much more important than your armor.
Yeah.
Armor only really affects you against physical hits, which is to say melee DPS.
Okay. It sounds like someone is pissed off that you're using her princess table.
I didn't realize you guys could hear that. Maybe I should go ahead and mute. She's in another room, but she's across the house. She's just got a bare of lungs.
I think it's interesting though that you say one of the issues is tied in with Chimera Shot, because you'd think at some point maybe the solution would be to nerf Chimera Shot if that was the case, rather than screw over the BM in survival that only have access to these general self heals rather than a spec specific one.
Yeah, I guess that's just from my perspective of PvPing mostly in Marks. Obviously, Mist is going to have a completely different situation. Maybe BM will be the PvP spec of choice, and BM is right now the only way to get Spirit Bonds. So I don't know.
Spirit Bond is a talent that any spec gets in Mists.
No, I'm talking about right now.
Oh.
Like right now, BM and Marksman are the two major. Nobody really PvPs as survival, and BM has Spirit Bond and Marksman has Chimera Shot. I don't know. I guess I could, like I said, these are knobs that they have to tune. If they decide that Hunters should be one of the classes that heals themselves the most, I won't complain because, we've had a pretty abysmal expansion, in terms of PvP. I mean, sure, there are some players who can play Hunters so well that they can win tournaments, and sure, we have comps that happen to counter some of the most popular comps right now. But, on average, your average Hunter who decides to get into PvP, my advice has typically been, roll another class.
No, I totally agree. A Cataclysm across the board was a really bad expansion for Hunter PvP. It was a great expansion for quality of life stuff, but it wasn't really a great expansion for Hunters in general, other than some nice quality of life improvements.
Honestly, I'd say we had a lot more good than bad in this expansion. There were times when we were underrepresented in PvE, like competitive PvE. There are definitely times that we're underrepresented in competitive PvP in the entire expansion.
The entire expansion, yeah.
Yeah, but for under, like anything under that, like average PvP, Hunters are exceedingly good in Battlegrounds. If you go and look at the top damage done, it's much easier to be a really, really good Hunter in a Battleground than it is to be, or not easier, but it's about as easy to be a really good Hunter in a Battleground as it is anything else. We've got a huge tool set that we can pull on. We can do a lot of good things. We're amazing kiters. We do a huge amount of front-loaded damage. Why that hasn't translated to a higher representation in competitive arena, I'm not good enough at competitive arena to say, but I can say that Hunter PvP is only bad for a very small portion of Hunters, which is to say the ones who are really skilled and seem to care about it the most.
All right, what's our next question?
Talvin and Hobbs, he says, with a baby porcupine pet name, he says, Gadsden. It says, after the Gadsden flag, which features a rattlesnake and the words, "Don't tread on me," was used as a libertarian symbol, changed to a porcupine. So that's his answer to our question. What was our question?
What's a good name for a new porcupine pet?
There you go. So he says Gadsden. Gadsden is a good name for his porcupine pet. And now his question for us is, he wants to know, is MM really the go-to spec for rated BGs, or is staying BM okay? He says, usually I'm on flag defense in Arathi and on offense in Orsong Gulch.
I guess I'll handle this one. MM is the go-to spec for any situation in PvP. There are no situations where anything is better, obviously, than MM. However, there are situations that BM can be as good, and sometimes, depending on your skill level and comfort level, better, and comp, I suppose. the reason I say this is because MM has readiness, and that means every fight is going to happen a lot differently than it will as BM. BM has a lot of pressure though, so you can't get BM is until their first big red pet stops being big and red, they have a huge amount of damage. That's also a trinket for them, so they can use that and then trinket if they're in trouble. And they've got a stun, which nobody else has, and they've got a whole bunch of other things that are really awesome. So they are absolutely viable in a lot of types of PvP, but MM is absolutely the go-to spec for anything rated. Rated arenas, rated battlegrounds.
Alrighty. So BM Jager asks, what's the cooldown on disengage in beta? I believe it's 25 seconds.
Yeah, 25 seconds
And
is what it's listed at.
And the
there's a
glyph, well, the glyph just increases the distance you travel now. It doesn't
But
reduce.
there's another way to reduce it, isn't it?
There might be. If there is, I'm not familiar with it off the top of my head.
Okay. I knew that they had got rid of a couple. Right now we can disengage every, 15 seconds, 14 seconds? But I think they had made it so that it's a little bit higher than that. But there's still, you can get it down under 20 for sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's any spec abilities that reduce the cooldown. And
If
yeah,
not, then my statement about the 15% heal is basically null and void. It doesn't really matter at that point.
yeah, I mean, if you're only able to hit it every 25 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, let me just put it this way: if there is a way to reduce it, it is a spec-specific ability that's default to a spec. Because I'm pretty.
You're very pretty.
I know. I'm almost too pretty. Okay, never mind. Somebody in the chat room has come to our rescue. Yes, the level 45 talent, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera, which works very differently in Mists, reduces the cooldown of disengage by 10 seconds.
Okay.
So you can get a 15-second cooldown disengage if you're willing to forego Spirit Bond self-heal or the aspect of the Ironhawk damage reduction. You can choose to get your disengage every 15 seconds instead of every 25 seconds.
Spirit Hawk.
Spirit Hawk! That's what we need.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to do some more thinking about this. They've opened up invitations to the level 90 arena test zone, so I might actually make a point of getting in on that, seeing how hunters perform in level 90 properly geared scenario.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because so if you do want to get the shorter duration cooldown, by definition, you will not have Spirit Bond at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, yeah, you're now choosing. So you can have Spirit Bond with a 25-second cooldown disengage, or you can have a 15 second cooldown disengage and no Spirit Bond. So yeah, I'm
pretty sure most PvPers are going to take. They're going to choose a shorter disengage, yeah. And as long as they can keep it higher, because I mean, passive healing is nice and all, but that's really more of a PvE thing, or the end of a battle, at which point you've all used all your cooldowns and you're just sort of sitting there trying to make sure that he can't hit you one more time before you can hit him one more time. Whereas being able to disengage any less frequently than 15 seconds would probably feel clumsy, because it's right now it's almost never up when I don't need it. Like I use it whenever it's up to gain an advantage, and I don't feel like, obviously, if I had more of it, I would appreciate it. But if I had to wait any longer than I currently do, which is about the same time, it would just feel too clunky. Hunters, although without the minimum range, that might have an effect, because right now I use it whenever they catch up to me, and I don't have a trap ready for them. Anyways, this is all speculation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, in PvP, pretty much the only time that you won't. Pretty much, in my experience, the only time you won't benefit from disengage is if you aren't in combat. Like, if I'm in combat, I usually want to get farther. I usually want to be someplace else. I'm always happy to expand the distance between me and the enemy.
Well, not always.
Or I'm trying to, or I'm chasing down somebody with a flag, and then I want to close faster.
In PvP. Sorry, I was talking about in general. I mean, if you're in PvE, often you don't want to move.
Correct. In PvE, lots and lots of times moving. That's why I was thinking the 15% for disengage from a PvE perspective made sense, because you're kind of making a sacrifice to disengage. Certainly, at least in terms of your attention.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
All right. And do we have any more questions?
We have one more. This is from Foxtrap05, and he wants to know, does the BM Spirit Beast still have their heal in beta? And I believe the answer is yes, they do.
Not only do they, but at least for the moment, if you have 5 Spirit Beasts in your stable and you Stampede, they will all cast their heal for you.
And if you have Spirit Bond, they will all, for the next 10 seconds, tick 5 times 1% health.
Mm-hmm.
That could be fun. That could be a lot of fun. That could be like...
Well,
you can't use it in arena. You can't use it in arena, but if you do that in a battleground, just to show off, you could
You do that while you're carrying the flag, man. You're like, big red pet, heal, heal.
They severely restrict the kind of things you can do when you're carrying the flag, eh? We can't even deterrence with that thing on, and we can still be damaged while we're deterrenced.
Mm-hmm.
One of the... But yeah, no. It's one of the interesting things to think about it is from a PvE perspective, from a rating perspective, is it's entirely possible that there will be certain fights where it's like, okay, this fight has this huge, heavy damage phase.
Yep.
You want to Stampede during this damage phase to reduce the burden on your healers. If you're really getting, all of this self-healing, this multiplicative self-healing from Spirit Bond, it'll be like, for this fight, you need to take Spirit Bond and you need to Stampede. Like during the first one, you Stampede. During the second one, or during the first one, you Deterrence. The second one, you Stampede. The third one, you Deterrence again. I could see Stampede actually being used as a defensive cooldown if they keep these multiplicative healing bonuses associated with it.
Yeah, and let's just hope it's not a phase where like the boss is, say, immune to damage for that small period of time.
Oh, I know, right? The boss isn't around, but now you got to pop Stampede to help the healers out. And tell your healer, all right, well, you better be healing all 5 of those guys.
Well, that's it for listener Q&A this week. Do we want to go over the rest of the emails that we've got?
Yeah, we have a tiny bit of time left.
Darkbrew, you have the first one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is someone, Daisy writes in. He had a comment about some of the discussion we had on Hunter CC just last week. So he said, while listening to the podcast last week, I couldn't help but think that a lot of the hunters calling for a targeted crowd control ability are forgetting a crucial point. Hunter traps may not be targetable, but it's the most powerful CC ability. And he goes on to explain that all the targeted abilities like polymorph and other things have a restriction placed on them, meaning can only be used on humanoids and beasts. But he says freezing trap has no such restriction, thus needing a balance in the form of needing to point to the target. He says, just my 2 cents, but I didn't want them to change it for the fear of it being nerfed in the process. And of course, the discussion we had last week, just to recap, was I think it was BM Yeager who mentioned that hunters are kind of backwards in that we don't target for our CC, and we have to target to do our AoE for the most part in terms of multi-shot, where the other classes don't really have that. They can target for their CC, and then they can just fire into a general area for their AoE, and we're kind of the opposite.
No, but I mean, he makes a really good point about CC balance. This is something that I think I talked about like a year ago or something when there was a big bitch fest going on about it. But yeah, it's if we could just target someone and bam, a trap appeared under their feet and trapped them, like, okay, where our CC would be way tougher than everyone else because everyone's has some kind of restrictions about who can be affected by it. I'm talking mostly from a PvE perspective here.
That's what I was going to say.
But arguably, there is a small and definite advantage to being able to put something on the ground and just leave it there while you walk off. There's also some advantage to being able to treat them as if they were traps, right? Like, oops, you stepped on a trap.
Yeah.
That's an advantage too.
If you know what the hostiles are going to do, like if you're in a situation where it's not worth CCing them where they are, but if they go for the healer, it is absolutely worth CCing them. In that situation, you're right. It would make a lot of sense to have. It would make a lot of traps are not in any way gimped. I think that from a PvP perspective, this is not the case because everybody CCs in PvP basically equally. It's only when people do something wonky like change into animals that you get an extra set of CC, like Fear Beats, for example, and things like Polymorph won't work on you. However, for PvE, I think it might, if they ever did decide to do targeted traps, I think it might make sense to just make them very restrictive, like only works on humanoids.
Sure.
I would be perfectly content with it. Like I had even brought up the concept of maybe reducing the duration, like only works on humanoids, only lasts 6 seconds. I'd be okay with that too.
But even in PvE, I mean, doing CC with the freezing trap is sort of one of the areas where hunters, can actually use their skill. And I mean, there was a
That's
skill
true.
to it, there was an art to it, and a lot of it's gone. I mean, certainly chain trapping and those types of things, or doing the trap pull. I mean, those don't really exist as much in the game, although you can still do it. But it's just one of those things that makes a hunter a hunter.
I remember the days of true trap mastery back in vanilla.
Back when it wasn't a talent?
When it was all about skill back in vanilla, it was like, okay, I have my frost trap that I can only drop at my feet, and I can't do it in combat. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I'm going to drop a trap here, and I'm going to, shoot someone and kite them into my trap. Then I'm going to go join the fight. And then I'm like, oh, my trap's about to wear off. I'm going to call my pet back, cancel my attack, feign death to bounce me out of combat. I'm going to get back in combat in a second or two. So I pop back up, drop another trap before I'm back in combat, start attacking again. The thing comes out. Oh, it's going after someone else. Tab over, distracting shot, bring it to the trap again. Oh, yeah. Hunters were heroes back then. Now everybody can do it so easily. And what happens? They're still complaining. Back in my day, you don't know how good you got it, you hunters, today with your trapping.
Yeah, now we have that glyph of distracting shot, which will target the mob to your pet. You can put your pet in a spot, put your trap near your pet, and
that'll be really good for pinch situations, like in 5-man. It's like, oh no, something's going after the healer. Okay, boom. I'll send it after my pet. My pet can cower, and
more to the point, you can tell your pet to move somewhere.
Yeah.
If it's the kind of thing that one-shots things, it can be, instead of just buying an extra one-shot for your pet, for your healer before one-shots a healer, you can be like, pet, move to the wall on the other side and distracting shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no more of those days of being the bad hunter standing in range next to the healer, pulling aggro, and then the mob comes running towards you. You feign death, and the healer gets smacked.
Yeah, so so I think trapping is. You can make a lot of arguments about our CC versus other people's CCs, and certainly we have advantages and disadvantages, but I tell you what, compared to vanilla days, you got it so good. You're dropping your traps in the middle of combat and throwing them across the room.
Oh. Well, you know what, though, to be honest, at least in PvP, that's still how it works a lot of times. I mean, sure, you can scatter trap and get your trap launcher going and all that stuff, and that's how a lot of people play, but the most effective traps are the ones that you don't have to spend focus on the launcher, and the one that you don't have to, basically, if you can manage to get a productive trap off that won't get broken by the DPS who's on it, or a dot or something, on a healer, for example, by, standing next to them, dropping a trap and having them, walk into it, that is the ideal in PvP, and that means you have to be able to predict them. So there is still an element of skill, but it's an element that you don't see when you're doing like 5-mans, which is what I think most people do right now.
Alrighty, well, let's see. Super Pie writes in with a comment about private WoW servers.
Do we even want to read this one?
I think we don't. I think just seeing that header, I want to say we don't want to read it, because you know what?
Yeah, I was trying to find a way to surreptitiously poke you on that one.
Yeah, private servers are against the terms of use. It's right up there with selling gold. And the reason private servers exist is, I know there's lots and lots of private servers that people pay subscription fees for. I mean, people are making these things to make money off of WoW. Yeah. And so I think that's probably not something we want to be talking about.
No. That said, I think it has been just about an hour.
Yes, indeed.
You want to do our outro and then tell people what's going on?
And then tell people.
Whoa! Did we just lose
a special secret thing?
Oh,
sure. No, what?
I think we just lost Frost. But...
For a brief second there, yeah.
Yeah, you got cut off. Anyway, you have been listening to episode 130 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from OutDPS, WoW Insider, and Call to Auction.
And I'm Darkbrew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
And this is Frostheim from Warcraft Hunters Union, WoW Insider, and Frostheim WHU on Twitter.
And I'm Molly Sonder from the Hunting Party Podcast and Thorlore Podcast.
We are on iTunes, YouTube now, Stitcher, and if you don't use any of those, you can use the raw RSS feed. And the links are all available in the show notes.
And if you like us, please don't be shy about leaving us a review on iTunes or a comment on YouTube. We would also greatly appreciate, especially one where you mention how uncommonly good-looking Frostheim is.
Send us your ideas for the show's title to huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com.
And stay thirsty, my friends. Remember to drink your Darkbrew lager.
Don't forget to spare, neuter your feral druids.
And don't forget to pay your dues. So
and don't forget to pay your dues.
So one final thing we wanted to talk to you guys about is one thing we were talking about doing was giving each show a title in addition to just the number, like episode 130. And also, we kind of want like a little description about like, hey, here's what we talked about in this show. So we decided we're going to toss it to you guys and see if you guys can come up with a better one than we can. So if you have a good idea for a title and description of this week's episode, please email it to huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com. And if we like your title, that's what's going to be the official title for the show. And once again, description of the show should be no more than 1 or 2 paragraphs, nothing super long.
And you can even have it shorter. Like if you feel you can get it done really concisely in like three sentences, by all means submit that.
All right. Well, I'm very curious to see what we get, and I hope that this ends up being a fun way to title our shows.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I know that's how the Instance does it. They do it like live after the show. They just sit there and wait until somebody submits a good one. But I think I like the idea of letting people think about it.
But don't think too long, because once the show is ready to go up, which could be any time in a day or a month.
Hey, God,
we're getting
better at this now.
Once the show's ready to go online, we're going to pick the best title and description from what we have at that time.
Yep. All right, so I'm sure you guys can still hear my very angry toddler, so I'm going to get going and take care of that.
Alrighty, well, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place.
Yep. See you next week.
Cheers.
I can jump shot, BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never worried about my threat, 'cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, 'cause I am hit capped. 'Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top the meters every fight. Rated MK, dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Gil'jadan, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul, Cthulhu, and Razorgore, Onyxia to Ragnaros. Which one have we killed the most? Kel'Thuzad to Malygos. We even killed a Kama's ghost. Feels like we're getting close, all that running has a ghost. Yogg-Saron, Thorian, Sartharian, Megthuradon, Saphiron, Lucifer to Sulfuron, Archaon, Amalon, Coralon, and Algalon. The faction champions, the death toll rolling